What's up, everybody? I am here live on YouTube tonight. I am ready and raring to talk about this whole 7,600 nurses that we're calling them nurses because the Florida system, I don't know. Let's just get back to, hold on. I gotta reboot here. 7,600 diplomas and transcripts issued fraudulently through 3 schools, technically 4. I did a deep dive tonight on all of the indictments. I went on to the website that the FBI and the Department of Justice at justice.gov, and I read all the indictments. I wanted to get a better idea to try to understand what was happening, what was going on with the charges. I heard a lot going on TikTok and all the socials today, Instagram, Twitter, all of it. And I wanted to get a better idea for myself to understand it, because my initial reaction, let me change my mic over here a little bit. My initial reaction on this was, oh, maybe these nurses were foreign nurses who were educated in their in their home country, and they paid all this money to get degree programs, and they went to school, and all my mind was going with maybe how the nurses had been defrauded. But I have to tell you, I am incredibly disappointed, because this is rampant fraud on both sides. And I typically want to go to bat for the nurses, but this is one situation that I can't do that. After reading the indictments and going through the step-by-step on what those fraud schemes meant, I realized these nurses who went through these programs, they knew what they were doing, because they did not attend classes, they did not attend clinicals. There's documentation in the indictments about the fact that they did not attend any of these things, which we all know. If you're a registered nurse and you go through the program like I did, like a lot of you did, we worked our butts off. We did our hours, we did our class assignments. We fought tooth and nail and went through those struggles to try to be, to become nurses. And that comes with integrity and the knowing that we did what we had to do to get the education, get the experience. And although we've all said the same thing about the fact that no, nursing school doesn't teach you how to be a nurse, you learn that on the floor, you get the basis of all of your core education, your anatomy, your physiology, your pharmacology, learning about the human body through our education. And it's a building block process that we go through in order to get our educations. And pardon me while I'm sitting here, I'm going to try to go back onto the live that I've got pulled up here. I have a lot of information that I have researched and gone through on the computer today, because this issue has been reeling around in my head. This is really bothering me a lot, because I know how hard I worked to get my degree and to earn it, and to go on to my advanced degrees and to earn it, and to learn that people were just paying a college or a school for their degree and expecting to receive a transcript and a diploma and then move on into the practice blows my mind, and it really angers me. And I know that, a lot of people might say, hey, back up a little bit. You don't want to get all angry at these nurses. It's not the nurses I'm angry at. I am in a way. I think that they know that they're frauds, but the schools, this system that they had going on was so blatantly disgusting. As I read the indictments, I could not believe what I was reading. This was a very calculated, systemic program that these individuals ran through these 3 schools, 4 total, because some of them, they opened a lot of LLCs and tried to do this whole collective covering up using their own CEU programs and their own docs programs. And it just blew my freaking mind. And I knew this could happen. I think we all did at the beginning of the pandemic, because we all heard during the pandemic, anytime there is global upheaval, there's market crashes, there's anything like that, there's going to be rampant abuses and frauds that go on out there. And I think that we kind of knew things might be coming, especially since nurses were in such high demand. just didn't think it would be to this degree. 7,600 diplomas and educational transcripts and degrees were issued over the course from 2017 to 2021. It looks like the FBI began their investigation in October on one of them, but the rest of them in November of 2021, and it continued, November of 2017, and it went on through October of 2021. So with that said, there was more time involved with these programs, and I think there's a lot more out there that we're not going to even know about. One of the programs ran from 2006 on as an international school. I don't know. I think they can only go back and prosecute on the ones that they actually have data on, and they have like a case, because the federal government is not going to indict and try a case that they can't win. They have to have hard factual data, and it took a whole lengthy investigation for them to get as far as they did with this case. So there's a couple years there where people may have slipped through the programs, and those aren't in the chargeable criteria from 2017 to 2021. The fact that one of these schools was running from 2006 on, that also bothers me in the sense of how many degrees were issued during that time. Now, the other parties that I hold responsible is the Florida State Board of Nursing. Now, this is just my opinion. Please don't snap back at me at this point. I just have to say that the state board in Florida, the Board of Registered Nursing, they have a duty to protect the public. And in that protecting the public, it is their job to also make sure that the schools that they approve as accredited schools are meeting the criteria for board approved curriculum. And I know that they're trying to defend the Board of Nursing, saying, oh, they did their due diligence. That's what the FBI agent, special agent in charge, said. Oh, they did their due diligence to try to make sure that they were keeping the public safe. But I disagree with that. When I read through the indictments and I saw that these schools, alleged schools, were only contracted with two, one of them was 2 skilled nursing homes and 1 home health agency. That in and of itself tells me that the programs did not have the basis let me just back up here. As a registered nurse, we have to go through clinical rotations and all the specialties, OB, emergency, intensive care. We do go to SNFs, but that's a very small portion of what we do in our clinical rotations. At least it was in mine. I did a very limited amount of time in a skilled nursing facility, and most of my program was at an actual large teaching hospital where I was in the intensive care, I was in the ICU, I was in obstetrics. So you have to have the full broad spectrum to get a good experience and a learning platform, a learning basis for your license. So it looks like these schools, when they went in and processed their documentation for accreditation with the Florida Board of Nursing, they were approved to run their programs with contracts only at 2 skilled nursing facilities and a home health agency. That's not enough. There needs to be oversight by the boards to assure that these schools are running their programs to meet the needs of the students and make sure that they're turning out nurses that are safe and that they have a basis to understand critical thinking, that they know how to assess patients, they know how to ask the right questions, and that their ability to learn and process the information that they are bringing in their brain as new nurses, that they understand how it all works together. And something went horribly awry here. And as I dug deeper, it got even more icky. It looks like this isn't the first time these kind of things have happened with Florida. It does look like California had a near miss or something similar around 2010 with a school that was, they were defrauding students in the program, and it looks like things were caught relatively early on, and it wasn't necessarily the students' fault. And once the students were complaining to the board about feeling like they were being defrauded by a unlicensed school or non-accredited school, they went after that school and caught it. It looks like not too far in. This one in Florida is spanning back years, and it's multiple schools, but it looks like they're all in cahoots with each other. They ran this ring out of Florida, New York, and Texas. So there were 3 states involved because the owners of these schools and the people that were involved in recruitment and doing all the dirty deeds that they did were from those 3 states. And they ran LLCs in all 3 states. All of them had addresses in each state or in at least 2 states that overlapped with one another. And this ring of how they did their deeds, it all overlapped through the 3 states. They purposely did this. Allegedly, it looks like their intent was to keep their school graduation criteria within the 3 states that were primary compact states, and they were sending most of their nurses to New York to do their testing. And the reason they were sending them to New York is because New York is one of the few states that you can actually go and you can test multiple times. No matter how many times you fail, you can go back and retest and retest and retest. So there was a very calculated way that they were doing things, and it seems like this whole thing is just icky. Icky. That's like the least, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just gross. It feels terrible. This is going to affect nurses. It's going to affect our practice for moving forward in ripples in ways that we can't even imagine. When I say it's going to affect our practice in ways and ripples that we cannot imagine, I mean, we are going to see this for years down the road. There is going to be effects where we may not even catch up with a lot of these fraudulent nurses until years down the road. It can take a board a long time to go after a nurse and remove them from practice. It's the FBI and the DOJ, the Justice Department, they have done their part with the investigation and arresting the 25 individuals who were responsible for the educational part of this and who were collecting the $114 frickin' million from all these students so that they can continue to do what they were doing. They're arrested. They're facing up to 25 years in prison each, and per offense. I don't know all of the details on what they're going to be sentenced to because this hasn't even gotten that far yet. We're just on indictment right now. So they've arrested these 25 individuals, but now we're left with the FBI saying, okay, we've done our part. We arrested the people responsible, but we're not going after the nurses. So what that means is this is going to be up to the states, the individual jurisdictions. This is going to be up to all of the states where these nurses have gone to over the course of several years and ended up. And it's going to be up to hospitals to identify who their staff members are. This is going to cause targeting amongst Haitian Americans. I hate to say this, but it really is sad that there has already been discussion on the Justice Department website that this was a Haitian American targeted plot for immigration. There's some issues with that, and I gotta go dig deeper into that, but this is going to affect people who gained their citizenship through visas that they gained through critical access visas, because nursing was such a high demand position in the last couple of years, especially with the pandemic, and people were given preferential visas when they became nurses and immigrated to the country. So it's going to affect a lot of processes moving forward. Education, universities who admitted some of these students in for degrees and advanced degrees, those who wanted to go into NP programs or, certified nurse anesthesia, licensure. So this is going to affect universities. It's going to affect hospitals. This is going to affect patient care. This is going to affect nurses, because we're all going to be under scrutiny at this point. Like we weren't already. We were already under so much scrutiny, and the public not trusting us like they used to after all of this negative press that's been out there since the pandemic stuff and all of the ERs overcrowding and hospitals overcrowding and people lashing back at nurses when there's administrative issues going on and long wait times in hospitals. So I'm trying not to get off course here, but what I'm trying to say is that this is going to have, like I said, that ripple effect. It's going to affect everybody moving forward. It's going to affect patients and how they feel about the care that they're getting, or the fear that they're not going to be getting the right care. I mean, can you imagine? I can't. If it's my family or me in the hospital, I want to know that the nurses taking care of me aren't fraudulent nurses who are out there running around with degrees they didn't earn. I'm sorry, I got to take a sip. I'm getting over a cold right now, so... I just want to touch on a couple things right now, and I want to read this off my paper so I get it right. There were 3 hospitals involved in this operation, and I say 4 because when I was digging through the indictments, there was Palm Beach School of Nursing, Siena College of Nursing LLC, Siena College, which was named something different. So there was 2 different licenses, and I don't know if one got closed down and another one opened. It looks like there was an RN program and an LPN program, and there was Sacred Heart International Institute. There was also several co-conspirators in this with different companies who were involved in fabricating documents, creating CEU certificates, and substantiating bogus clinical information. So it looks like there was a lot of parties involved. There was a lot of conspirators and co-conspirators. I have linked the Justice Department's website link down in the description of this video down below. There's a lengthy description that I typed up. Then a lot of that data, that was all information I took directly from the Justice Department's website. On that link, if you click on it and go to the bottom of the page, there is several cases down there, and those cases are all of the indictments, and you can read through all of them yourself. Please fact check me. Please check your information before you go posting anything further. I want you to become educated about what's actually going on, and read those indictments, because it's very telling as you're reading it to understand what went into this operation for the FBI to bust up these rings, and what limitations they were up against with what they could charge and what they couldn't, and what could possibly be hanging out there at this point, because there is still information about, like I said, from 2006 to 2017 was a very long time. And one of these schools was running an international school and was being charged, and all of the parties in that indictment were being charged with what's listed as international frauds, as well as interstate fraud. And that's where I get into the concerns about what were they doing to help people get visas on critical need basis, and how does that affect people's citizenship? If you're a nurse out there and you're one of the 7,600 who was supposedly graduated with it between 2017 and 2021, I know you're probably really freaking out right about now, and justifiably so. Other than coming forward before you get caught, I would strongly recommend that you talk to a lawyer. This is a situation where every day that you continue to practice as a nurse and call yourself a nurse, and the Justice Department has made these statements every day forward from here forward that you continue to do that, you're breaking laws. And now that the information is known, that it's out there, that the jig is up, you're going to have to come forward. But you probably should consult a lawyer and see what your options are at this point. But I would not be out there practicing as a nurse if I legally was not a nurse at this point, because you can face criminal charges. So that's another thing we need to talk about here, is what is the difference between criminal charges and administrative charges? Well, criminal charges can be brought against you federally, or they can be brought against you in your own state for impersonating a nurse. And in the state of California, it is a misdemeanor. I pulled up the charges earlier through Justia Law. Impersonating a registered nurse carries a fine of up to $1,000 per offense, and that could be per day that you actually do it, and up to 1 year, no less than 10 days, and no more than a year in prison. But what you have to remember is that's per offense, and each offense could be each day that you worked on the job. So you need to remember that you could face charges in your state, and you could face charges federally if you're working for an institution such as Veterans Affairs or anything like that. If you're working for a federally funded Medicare facility, you can face federal charges. These are all fraud charges, and they may range from misdemeanor, but they could go up to a fraud, and this could affect your whole life moving forward. So like I said, you may want to seek legal counsel if you are one of these nurses who's out there practicing. You don't want to get in trouble with the law moving forward, and be honest with your employers and your patients, because it is not right if you're out there practicing with a license you did not earn and you know that you did not earn it. So yeah, charges for criminal matters can be handled through the state or through the federal. Criminal is very different than administrative law. Administrative law is handled by your boards of nursing. So let's say that you do something wrong, or someone has accused you of doing something wrong, or there's an issue with diversion, or you impersonated a nurse. You can face charges both administratively and criminally at this point. It used to be where they used to let boards of nursing handle nurses who were problematic or there was an issue going on. But as we saw with the Redonda Vaught case, with Miss Joppy, with a lot of these other nurses who have faced criminal charges as of late, criminal and administrative law hearings can apply. The administrative law hearings are going to strip you of your rights to practice nursing. It's going to strip you of your license, or you're going to get put on probation, or there's going to be something else of the like. In this instance, with what's happened here with the Florida State Board of Nursing, yeah, you're going to lose your nursing license. And if you don't come forward right away, I can't say that any board is going to actually let you practice or earn a degree elsewhere, but I think it depends on how you handle yourself in this whole thing. I don't want to judge anyone, and yeah, I am in some ways, because I think you know if you earned a degree or not. But it is not fair to keep putting patients in danger by the fact that you did not do the education that you needed to do. And it's not fair to the nursing profession for those of us out there that busted our butts to get the degrees that we did and to earn our positions and do the education and put in the work and the hours and the blood, sweat, and tears to make a pittance when we came out of school, and we did our time in that too. So for you to cut the line and go in ahead and not have had to do the coursework and the time, that's not going to fly. You will be found out. And, one of my more favorite scriptures from the Bible talks about what's done in darkness will come to light. Always. It always does. If you are doing something that you know to be deeply wrong and dark, it will come to light. I promise you. Everything always does. It will root its ugly head, and you will be found out at some point. So there's that. As far as the Board of Nursing in Florida, you need to do better. This is just not okay that this went on this long and that nobody knew. There was also another school by the name of MPI. It was Medical Practical, MPI. M as in Mary, P as in Paul, I as in Indian. So it was MPI, and they were disassembled in 2018 for curriculum issues, and there was a lot of students left holding the bag because they paid a lot for their education, and then the school, which wasn't meeting the goals, and it wasn't credentialed, the board removed their credentialing, and so they lost their license as a school. So a lot of students lost their money and their time that they put in with that school, and were left kind of with a lot of debt and no degrees, and the doors were shut on that institution. And you might want to look into that one too. That story is an interesting story. Like I said, it's called MPI, and in 2018 their doors were forced shut. But listen to this. I did some research today, and it looks like they're back online. They are selling classes again. I don't know if they got a license to go back into business, but it looks like they're back at it, and they're doing it on an online platform at this point. So I don't know what that's all about. I think these programs are going to be rampant. I think we're going to see more come out of the woodwork. I think this is a lot bigger than this one case that we're looking, or the 6 cases that encompass these 4 education, there's 4 schools. I think this is a lot bigger than this. I think there's a lot more schools out there that this has affected. I think this rampant fraud has been going on for a long time. I think there's more of it. And I think we all know, we've worked with nurses who came out and were training new grads, and it's like, I've been in those situations where I was mentoring new grads going, did they even go to school? Like, they don't know anything at all. Like, nothing. And I've questioned, whether or not they could continue to train, and usually they left, and it wasn't a bullying thing or whatever. There was just no clinical basis whatsoever and no critical thinking skills, and it was like they barely were out of high school and almost like too young to even be in nursing. It was just weird. I was like, hey, they have a 4-year degree and they're 19 and they don't seem to know anything about anything. It was just weird. That happened one time, but I can't say what that was about. It just seemed like they didn't really go to school. And I know that there's a lot of nurses out there who've had that experience with people that they've been mentoring. So if you've seen that, please leave a comment. If you know someone that this is affecting right now, or you've had an experience with this kind of nurse, please leave a comment down below. You don't have to tell who exactly this was. No doxing of people. We're not doing that right now. Although I do want to give the names of all the people who are involved in this scandal. But instead, I will put it on a community post so that people can read it, cut and paste, and it's directly from the indictments so people can have those names. But if I'd like to hear some feedback from people, I want to know what your thoughts are on this. How do you think it's going to affect our nursing practice moving forward? How do you think it's going to affect nursing, the perception of nursing, the community's trust of us, and what they think of us? Because right now, I feel like they don't know whether they can trust us or not. And with this all hanging out there, I'm along with them. I don't know if we can trust us right now. I mean, I know what my degrees are, but they don't. And they do have a right to know. And before, I might not have been willing to show my transcripts or my degree packets to patients, but I think I'm going to start carrying it in my bag and on my phone, have it scanned in there. If somebody really wants to, my CV or my information about where to school and my transcripts, I'm going to just shoot it over to them and let them read it themselves. I feel like I need to at least have that so that if a patient, family, or someone who is in my care asks, they have the right to see that I am qualified to be there. And I have no problem showing that to someone who genuinely wants to know. Just take your address and that kind of stuff off of those documents, but it won't hurt us to show who we are. I think that in some units, we maybe need to go back to posting our credentials on the wall on the way in so that patients can see who's licensed from where and what schools and such, or having a binder where, this Freedom of Information Act, where people want that information, they can go down to HR and be allowed to look at the binder and see what our credentialing is, because I'm proud of what my credentials are. I know most of you are too, and if someone wants to review them to know that their mother or father or brother or sister is going to be cared for, I think they have the right to see that. So I think as hospitals, we're going to have more transparency on who we are as nurses and what our education and background is in and what our specialties are in. That's just me. If you agree, please let me know. Or if you have ideas on how we could do this better, let me know. Maybe if it's just even beefing up our LinkedIn profile and having all the information there and upload it onto the site. That way we can just direct someone to the traffic source so that they can go and review our profile and see those downloaded documents of our transcripts, our education, and the information about where we have worked and such like that. So we've got to find a way where we can be a little bit more open in sharing what we've done so that we can build some trust back with our patients. I know it feels like we're giving away a lot of our personal information, but we can always keep our permanent addresses and everything out of it. I just think it's important that we really do what we can to build trust right now, because the trust is just on the floor. It's trashed with the strikes and the misinformation and the union busting and all that BS that was going on a couple weeks ago. And the timing of this. I mean, does anybody else have a problem with the timing of this? Like, this has been going on for years and months as of 2023. This investigation could have been exposed at any other time, but all of a sudden it is brought out today. Today was the day that the National Nurses National Nurses United were coming forth with mini walkouts all across the country, 2-hour walkouts to protest for safe nurse staffing. It was not a strike, but it was 2-hour incremental workouts that they had given the hospital notice about to protest and bring awareness to the need for staffing ratios. So this was a very big day across the country that was supposed to symbolize nurses coming together in solidarity and really, trying to work together to try to find some ways that we could possibly help with the nursing ratio issue. Well, that whole thing got blown to bits because no sooner did that begin today and this whole news cycle spilled over with the 7,600 nurses and the 2,400 actual licensed who went through NCLEX and got their exams, and everybody started losing their damn mind, which I get it, but it kind of blew the whole walkout thing with trying to find solutions for healthcare and ratio laws out of the water. So we're not even talking about that at this point, and thousands of nurses all over the country were out protesting and peacefully protesting and trying to make their plight known as far as safe staffing ratios and what those truly mean. So I'm kind of bummed that whole thing got blown out of the water, and that we're going to be talking about this now for quite a while to come. The other thing we have to remember is that Florida is part of Florida, Texas, and New Jersey and New York. They are part of the compact states. Because they're part of the compact states, they are part of the 39 compact states, which means that although they can get their license in any one of the 4 states first time, because that's where the schools are. But if they want to go to New York and get their license, they can take that test unlimited amount of times. Taking that test unlimited amount of times until you pass essentially lets you see all the test banks, and you start to get to know all of the tests, because there's only usually 3 or 4 banked tests. So you just keep taking the tests. Eventually you're going to know all the answers on all the tests. So people in New York could take as many tests as they wanted to take in order to try to pass. They just didn't pass this one. I'll do it again next week. I'll do it again next week. So they just keep taking it until they passed. So then once they passed, they could go to any state in the 50 states, not just the 39. They were already licensed in 39, but if they wanted to go to do a travel contract in California, they get to apply by endorsement in California or one of the other non-compact states. So yeah, they can go work in California on endorsement, make the big bucks, and become a traveler out there. So it really gave them, the world was their oyster, and they could work in all 50 states. And I think that the big scary thing there is you're going to have nurses who are currently working under endorsement in all the states right now. I think California is going to be especially interesting because we tend to have higher salaries. And I know a lot of nurses come out there and they want to make a lot of money and get their coin and then go back to their home state wherever they came from. So I think that we're going to see a lot of travel nurses that were here on those kind of contracts, and I don't know. I think it's just going to keep blustering along. I really want to know too how this affects the FAFSA and the federal student aid, the Pell Grants and the grants for students who are in college, because if these were accredited schools, that means that these students got FAFSA grants and financial aid, and that they got Pell Grants, and they were given a lot of stipends to help get them through their educational program. But at the same time, where did that money go? was that just to just pay off the people who were buying the licenses, or pay off the people that they paid? They had the same 3 people working with CEUfast.com that were going on and doing the computer programs for their nursing students, who never sat down at the computer, and they just would go in and fire off all the correct answers and print them certificates off of this website that was CEUfast. So those were fraudulent certificates because the nurses weren't doing the work to take the classes to do the tests. So the other thing was that these nursing schools were being run by CNAs, and never in my entire life have I ever seen an RN program or an LVN program run by a CNA. You usually have to have someone who has a higher degree than you do to run a program in which you're going to climb that ladder. If I want to become a nurse practitioner in my own hometown, I am going to have to work and, alongside my other nurses, and I'm going to have to do the jobs of putting in the work, putting in the effort, putting in the clinical time, and I'm going to have to work and do it. Like, it just isn't something that's not, you can't just poo-poo it. You can't. You have to do your job. So if I wanted to be an NP, I would have to have someone who was higher in authority than me, someone who already has an NP teaching me. I can't just be trained by a CNA whose certificate is from a different skill set, because that's not what I'm doing now as an RN. So I would have to have someone that has at least one level higher than me to be able to train me as a registered nurse. So I know there's a lot of complex stuff in here, and I apologize. I have been struggling with this nasty cold, and I feel a little bit of a medicine head right now, when you kind of feel like your head is like a helium balloon and it's disassociating with your body. I'm trying to do this live because once I heard all about it and it was just all over the news, I really wanted to get in and talk about it, because this is something I am incredibly passionate about. I do not like scams that affect nurses who work so hard to get their practice. It's just important to me to be able to see these nurses. They've worked so hard. We've all worked so hard, and it is so incredibly unfair to have a program come alongside and undercut what the rest of us have been doing. So it looks like I've got somebody in here, and I can't see. It says, "Oh, hi, just saw you live and stopped by to say hi." Well, hello. Thanks for joining. Yeah, I was feeling all hot and bothered tonight after the whole scandal hit with the nursing scandal in Florida and all the things that are surrounding it. And I did a real deep dive into the indictments and read all about those and learned quite a bit about what they actually mean. So it's very interesting, and I was mistaken in the fact that I thought maybe the nurses were more innocent in this, and unfortunately, no. They all knew that they weren't taking classes. They all knew that they weren't part of programs or doing clinical. It was a transactional nature of they were going to pay their school administrator, and they were getting a degree and a set of transcripts without even having to attend anywhere or do any clinicals. So it's just pains my heart to hear these kinds of things happening, and I really want to consider how it's going to look moving forward. I know that the investigations are going to continue to ripple outward. Like I said earlier, I think that the Department of Justice and the FBI is wrapping up their end of what they're doing, and that was just strictly to deal with the 3 or 4 schools and the individuals who were involved in the ring itself. But now this goes on to the state boards of nursing and what is their responsibility in it, because there is responsibility. They most definitely had responsibility. They did not have clinical sites for these nurses to be going to. They manufactured 2 nursing homes to say that they were going to be doing all their clinicals there, and it wasn't a diverse clinical experience. You can't just have 2 nursing homes for a full nursing program to get you through all the critical care and all the OB and everything else. But that's what they were doing. They were using the skilled nursing home to try to say nurses were getting clinicals, and that was not true. So there is some liability here with the Board of Nursing, and then there's Compact State, which, a lot of these nurses have now gone on to work in other states. So they're going to be real hard to catch up with. It's going to be a real tough kind of thing to figure out where everybody's gone. And bottom line is, a lot of these nurses are still at our bedsides. They are still going to be at our bedsides. 7,600 nurses. They're not all just in Florida. Like I said, most of them are in New York. A lot of them are in Texas, some in New Jersey. But we know that through endorsement, a lot of them went out and spread out across all 50 states. So the Justice Department is not going to be prosecuting them. So that's a no-go. He's prosecuting the educators and the owners of the 3 schools. And as far as the nurses go, it's going to be up to the boards and administrative hearings, and trying to figure out what the board can do to administratively go after nurses and strip them of licenses. So I don't know if you heard what I said earlier, but I was telling people, if you are a nurse who's in this predicament and you are practicing knowing you shouldn't have a license, then make sure that you contact a lawyer. You're going to need an advocate or a lawyer on your side to help you understand what comes next. But do not continue to practice in your practice anymore. You have to pull yourself out at this point, because if you do not, you are breaking the laws. Go from misdemeanor to breaking federal laws, because all of the information is now available that the schools were breaking all these other laws. And if you continue to practice with those things hanging over your head, the charges are only going to get bigger. So that's why I say seek counsel, and be very careful who you talk to, because you do have to protect yourself, and not everybody knows the story. So this is going to be a very, very interesting way that this plays out. And I wanted to come into this with the whole idea that the nurses, it probably wasn't their fault, or maybe there was something that they got bamboozled into. And no, as I read all those indictments, no, this is something that was a very well thought out scheme. And it was like, hey, don't forget the stamps for the transcripts tonight, so I can stamp off all their papers before they go. That was read in the transcripts. So they knew what they were doing. And they got $114 million from these students. And that is a criminal shame. And where are they now? They got their money. Some of them are in jail, but some of them haven't been caught yet. So this is crazy town.